Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com. Photo, video, digital media production. We're discussing the second installation in the Too Fast, Too Furious franchise. Well, it's technically called the Fast franchise, I think, or whatever. Fast and Furious franchise. But today we are discussing Too Fast, Too Furious, the 2003 action film directed by John Singleton, written by the new writers. Not these guys were not on the first one. Michael Brandt and Derek Haas. You'd probably know these writers best from Haas from like Invincible, 310 to Yuma. I like that one. I didn't see The Double, and then he's done some television as well. Michael Brandt, you probably know him best well for. Let me see. I actually don't know anything this guy's done, and I can't find anything that says. He's a frequent collaborator with Derek Haas, so I'm just gonna assume that he's done a lot of work with him. Yeah, 310 to Yuma and stuff like that. They must be like two peas in a pod kind of thing. Yeah, they've done a lot of television, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, all the Chicago shows, I guess. I guess this dude's just very local to Chicago. So anyways, we have the second installation in the Too Fast, Too Furious franchise. It is co-written by Gary Scott Thompson, who I believe is the guy that's the mastermind for most of these more recent movies as well. Let me see what he's done recently. Okay, so actually, why did I think that he was on the... Okay, so this was the last one he wrote on. My fault. He was a writer on the first Fast and Furious, and he was the story writer on the Too Fast, Too Furious movie as well. But he was also a writer on Hollow Man and Hollow Man 2, 88 Minutes, and some television, the Knight Rider series that was in 08 and 09. Yeah, I'm actually not too familiar with this guy. The more I look at it, I thought I kind of got this guy mixed up with someone else, I think. But anyways, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of background about what was going on with Too Fast, Too Furious versus the first one. So in the first one, we did kind of give a nice little stand-alone review of the last few movies I've been discussing. I'm trying to go back and watch the majority of the Fast and Furious franchise to kind of get ready for F9. And so so far I have watched... At this point, I've completed the first 5 movies, and I'm in the beginning of the 6th one right now. I have a pretty fun conversation with my buddy Hatham on the Aftercast 23 about my overall feelings between the first 5 movies. But just to kind of summarize that for anyone that has not listened to the Aftercast. Again, the Aftercast is just kind of like bullshit and talking about random stuff. That was Aftercast 23. So the main difference in between these first 5 movies that I can tell is the first one, we have each one of the... Okay, so for each one of these movies, they have a different location, thus a different soundtrack, thus a different feel. The first 3 movies have different directors and different like composers and cinematographers and people that are responsible for the music. And so the first one has the Vegas underground, Las Vegas, LA feel. I know I keep saying Vegas, but I think there's one race that happens in Vegas. I don't remember exactly. I think it's more LA. And then the second movie, which is what we're going to talk about today, this one has directed by John Singleton. This one's much more of what I'd call like urban Miami feel. It definitely has that early 2000s feel as well. It looks like they had shot this after it said principal photography started in Miami in 2002. And it was majority of it was shot in Miami and South Florida, and you can really tell just by the lighting of the movie. It feels entirely different, in my opinion. I feel like it's an entirely different feel. The second movie feels like a soft reboot of the first movie in a way. Can't really explain too much why without going into full details. But overarching, they kind of have Too Fast, Too Furious as almost not beat for beat, but very similar in style of how things unravel in this movie. So I was considering Too Fast, Too Furious as a soft reboot in a less serious, more comedic manner, with Tyrese Gibson kind of filling in as the co-star, the co-lead of Vin Diesel, which it's almost like saying, I know this is kind of ironic, but like chocolate versus vanilla ice cream, and that's like the most generic thing you could say. And I'm not saying that because of their color. I'm saying that because I like chocolate and I like vanilla ice cream, and so it's like choose your flavor to which is your favorite movie. I kind of prefer the first movie over the second movie, in my opinion, strictly because of the soundtrack, and I just like that type of energy it brings. Um, and they're both at the same. They're a, they're about at the same length as well, so I feel like the pacing is just about the same. Um, I will say for Too Fast, Too Furious, in some parts, it's not like it dragged. It's just it did not have that the same feel to it that I enjoyed in the first one. So that's strictly why I enjoyed the first one. Not really so much because of the cast as much. I will say the cast of having was it Michelle Rodriguez and the guy that played Johnny Tran in the first movie. I think those characters were a tad bit stronger, like the antagonists and some of the supporting characters were a little bit stronger in the first one, or just more interesting from how they were written. Let me see what else. Anything else we need to talk about this movie? They went from a 35. I don't know if I talked about the how much the first movie cost. $38 million, and they had a $207 million return on the first movie. Second movie, they had almost double that, $76 million budget, and they only made 236 million. They weren't able to even. They You would think if you doubled the budget, then you would be able to double the box office, but that's not necessarily what happened. So, um, thus, that's what we have. This is 108 minutes. Both the first two movies are approximately, just about an hour 45. Um, so let me talk about who else is in this movie. It is an installment in the Fast and Furious franchise and stars Paul Walker, Tyrese Gibson, Eva Mendes, Cole Hauser, Ludacris, and James Remar. Too Fast, Too Furious follows Brian O'Connor and Roman Pierce Gibson, who go undercover for the U.S. Customs Service to apprehend drug lord Carter Verone, who is played by Hauser, um, in exchange for uh, cleaning their criminal records. Um, and again, we're going to have to talk about what happened at the end of the first movie to kind of gear you in what's going on with this movie. So there will be spoilers for the first Fast and Furious, just like there would be if there's any series of something like that. I'm kind of watching this almost as if it is like a really expensive television series, and it's amazing to see how much um, praise Marvel gets for having like a connected universe. But I really do feel like after watching these first few episodes, or sorry, first few movies of Fast and Furious, Universal had a multiverse way, or not a multiverse, but a universe way longer before Marvel did, from what I can tell. At least they seemed a lot more like they were trying to do it without like fanboying about it. Especially with having like the ending of the movie. I think the first movie they have like a stinger scene, and I don't remember if the second one does or not. some of these movies I haven't watched the after the credits. Some of them have like post credit scenes and stuff like that. So they were doing post credit scenes. They were bringing people from earlier movies to later movies, and they were doing all of this way before Marvel seemed to have really gotten their foot into it. So yeah, I just want to kind of point that out. Not to say that Marvel's doing it bad. I'm just I actually have Far From Home playing in the background right now while I'm talking, but let me see. Let me get a little water. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about the behind the scenes plans for a sequel to the Fast and Furious 1. Were developed immediately following the film's box office success. Early treatments for a sequel initially featured the returns of both Vin Diesel and Walker. That Vin Diesel declined, choosing to star in Chronicles of Riddick in '04. Singleton, who critically praised the film, was announced to direct the second in place of Rob Cohen, who left the franchise after directing the previous installment. Like I said, they started filming in Miami 2002. When did this release? So they had a pretty fast turnaround on this, in my opinion. I mean, if they were doing principal photography in 2002, October 2002, and it was released in June 603. I mean, that is not long at all. That's pretty impressive. So it says, Wikipedia says, Too Fast, Too Furious released June 603, $236 million worldwide. That's worldwide? Wow. It received negative reviews on Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, blah blah blah. Raspberry got a couple Raspberry nominations and stuff like that. Fuck them, whatever. I don't think this movie deserves raspberries. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. All right, so let's discuss the plot of Too Fast, Too Furious right here, right now. All right, let me see what we got. By the way, thank you for subscribing to the Patreon, patreon.com/LuckyDog Podcast. Here's the plot. And this is obviously going to be spoilers. I actually do want to check to see if this is the same editor. Bruce Cannon, Dallas Pruitt did the second one. Edited by Peter Honus in the first one. Okay, so did it almost a completely different team did the second one. All right, so here's the plot. After letting Dominic Toretto escape from the authorities, former LAPD officer Brian O'Connor flees from Los Angeles to escape prosecution. He subsequently relocates to Miami and makes his living participating in illegal street races, driving a heavily modified silver Nissan Skyline GTR R34. Not that I would know anything what that means, but so yeah, that's kind of the setup. This movie almost opens up. I don't think it's immediately right after, but it's either several months or maybe a year after. And you don't necessarily have to have watched the first one. The races are organized by his local mechanic friend, Tage Parker. After winning a race against drivers including Suki, the police show up and Brian is arrested. He is taken into custody but given a deal by his former boss, Agent Bilkins, and the U.S. Customs Agent Markham to go undercover and bring down Argentinian drug lord Carter Verone in exchange for clearance of his criminal record. And to be clear, I'm pretty sure Haas is definitely not Argentinian at all. just to be clear, I was like, there's something about this guy. he's just got like this interesting tan. I mean, he's from Santa Barbara, California, so he might have some sort of Latin in him, but like this dude's American. All right, so um, yeah, that was like fuck y'all for not putting no whatever about that. Um, I do feel like Paul Walker kind of just like skates through being in this illegal street race after being an FBI agent. Um, they're just like, oh, he's so good, we got to bring him in. Um, it's like okay, he's kind of gone rogue like more than once. Um, so Agent Monica Fuertes, who has been undercover with Verone for a year, agrees to assist bringing Brian into the organization. Brian agrees on the condition that he is given permission to choose his own partner. So, two things. I don't really feel like Eva Mendes is really given that much pathos. She's more or less supposed to be the love interest for both Paul Walker, or kind of the love interest for Paul Walker, and the love interest for um, Chris Haas. I was just like, this doesn't even. Sorry, Cole Hauser, um, or the drug lord guy. I was just like, she's not really given anything more than that to do at that point. They could have done a little bit more with her, considering I felt like Mia in the previous, who was the love interest in the previous role, was a little bit more interesting. I'm not saying that she was like a better or worse actress. It's not really so much about their acting ability. It's more about how they wrote them. So I'm just going to say that Eva Mendes' character is a little bit underwritten, and a lot of it is carried on the back of her looks. She's amazing. She's a beautiful actress, so naturally the camera is just like lingering on her. Let me see what else we got. Brian agrees on the condition that he's given permission to choose his own partner. So he says from like back in the day, like having a childhood friend Roman Pierce, and they do have some like background. Let's talk about the background of Roman Pierce. So Roman Pierce, let me see. Okay, so this prompts Brian to travel to Barstow, where he enlists the help of childhood friend Roman Pierce, who served jail time for housing stolen cars in a garage, and currently making a living as a demolition derby driver. I do feel like they're like, there's only one man for the job. It's Roman Pierce. And I feel like that was never explained why we need him. The one thing about the Fast franchise is they change the quote unquote special abilities that everyone does in in all of the movies. Like Ludacris is a local mechanic in this movie, and he's running races. By the fifth one, without going, or at least I think by a later movie, Tage Parker is a complete like hacker, and he can just hack into the grid. It's like, okay, so that, I guess that's how that's gonna work. Roman Pierce is just like the guy that can talk really fast or something like that. It's like that's not what he was in the second movie. There's a complete change in these characters. So let me go back. So he enlists the childhood friend of Roman Pierce, who he was a demolition derby driver, and he was pissed that I think he feels that okay, so yeah. Roman, currently on parole, gets into a brief fight and blames Brian for his arrest, but reluctantly agrees to help in exchange for the same deal Brian was offered. For their mission, they are issued two confiscated modified Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 7s and Mitsubishi Eclipse Spider GTS. Who would know this except for like the people that are actually writing this? I don't feel like they ever talk about which exact car it is, except maybe later in the franchise. They're like, all right, I need a Ford over a Mitsubishi, or a Honda over this, Roman and Brian are later hired by Verone, who tasks the duo to compete against rival drivers to obtain a package from a confiscated Ferrari located in a lot. During the race, some of the hired drivers crash while a few are injured by big rigs. Markham, who mistakenly thinks that the duo is trying to run away, follows them into a lot. The police ambush spooks um, Roman, who shoots at Markham to help maintain his cover. Roman later confronts the agent for interfering with the mission. Brian is able to salvage the situation, however, telling Bilkins that Verone is allegedly aiming to launder his money in Miami before escaping on his private jet. So it's not exactly the same story as the first movie. It is still like infiltrating into, you know, who I guess who Wilkins would be. Sorry, not Bilkins, but who Carter would be. And it's still the gotta infiltrate, gotta compete in races, gotta do this thing, gotta do this to compete the thing, to get the thing, to get the guy to save the day kind of thing. And I don't really have anything too negative to say about that. The only thing I did notice by some of the racing shots where they were shot a little bit differently. These are obviously, I think the races in here are by far a little bit longer at this point. We have not drag races that are happening like in the first one, but the second one, let me see, the second movie is more or less drag races meet like task races and stuff like that. Let me see. I think number 2 was where they do a drag race and have to go around a barrel and come back. So I do like that as well. Let me see what else we got. It's like relay races, kind of, I think is what it's called. So yeah, I do like the cinematography in this movie. It's different from the first one, brighter, like I said. There's a point where in that race when they're trying to get the stuff from the Ferrari located in that lot, where a dude gets crushed by a tractor trailer, and I've been trying to pinpoint when exactly this franchise loses its mind, and I'm pretty sure that this this is one of the beginnings of when people started to really get hurt in this series. I know at the ending of the first one when Jesse was shot, someone was shot, but and then Paul Walker kills Johnny Tran for that. And then let me see, the next big thing, I think what happens is this tractor trailer crushes one of the drivers, which was pretty intense. I was like, holy shit, that would suck. So yeah, I think in this movie things start to like escalate with how people are dying and how, to what extent. But yeah, people are going down. So yeah, let me see. What else we got? Brian and Roman challenge a pair of muscle drivers they race when competing for Verone's hiring for pink slips. Oh, I gotta say, this one part where in the previous scene where Tyrese is looking for Markham's food or for his lunch, that shit was pretty funny. He straight up goes for his burger, says, is that yours? Oh, I'm gonna have this. I'm gonna have this. Some funny shit. So anyways, Brian Roman challenged a pair of muscle drivers they raced to compete Verone's hiring for pink slips. I think this was the relay race I was talking about. And I know what pink slips are now. It's the cars. I feel like I'm starting to understand the lingo. And it took me to the fourth movie to realize they called Brian Buster. I didn't even remember that. Or I didn't realize that. Despite engine and power output handicaps, they win the race and obtain the rival cars. And that the cars are a 1969 Yenko Camaro SYC and a 1970 Dodge Challenger race type, previously driven by the hired drivers. When they leave those drivers, that is the funniest shot. They're just like standing in the middle of the road, like laughing as they leave. Why would you stand in the middle of the road holding your girls like that? It's like, no. Just go back and watch that if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's just like, what the shit? And by the way, we are live tweeting while we're watching these as well at LuckyDog Podcast on Twitter. Let me grab a little bit of water. So Roman later confronts Brian about the constant threat of Verone's men. However, they patch up their differences and focus on completing the mission. At the VIP section of a nightclub, Brian and Roman witness Verone torturing MPD detective Whitworth while giving his men a window of opportunity to make their getaway. Whitworth into giving a window of opportunity to get their giveaway. They put a fucking rat on this dude's stomach. Of course they choose like a chubby detective, and they're like, "Oh, you fucking fat ass! This is what you deserve." Blah, blah, blah. It's like, come on! It's like, can we not with the fat shaming anymore? It's like, can we just not? It's like, this guy's a little bit chubby, just trying to do his own thing, trying to be undercover, and of course I got to put a fucking rat on him. It's like, jeez. And I gotta be honest, Paul Walker and Tyrese Gibson's reaction is kind of laissez-faire. It's like, they're like, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but I would be freaking out. I would be like, oh my gosh, talk about infection. Like, I'd be like, oh my God. Tyrese is like, yeah, man, it's about to be over soon. Just look at their faces. They don't look exactly like traumatized like I think they would. I do think Tyrese brings it up though. Let me see. The next morning, Monica warns them that they will be killed once the drop is made. Despite this, Markham refuses to call off the job, claiming that this is their one chance to catch Verone. That was kind of a weird part where Monica just shows up on the boat or I think they're on a boat. I think Brian was on a boat. On like a houseboat, and she's like, they're gonna kill you. I don't even know how I found you, or like, how did she find Brian? Or I guess she would know if Brian lives there because she is a detective. Whatever. Maybe I just was thinking about too hard. Let me see. On the day of the mission, Brian and Roman begin transporting duffel bags of Verone's money with Verone's associates, Enrique and Roberto, riding along to accompany them. Enrique and Roberto are pretty funny in this, I'll be honest. And I do gotta say, where are the good Latin guys? It's kind of irritating that every Latin person in this movie has to be some sort of stereotype or on the antagonist side. It's like, can we get? Not every Latin man is a thug or a gangster, and it's not solved. I don't think this problem is solved in this franchise until at least Fast 5. So yeah. Before the window is set, Whitworth decides to call in the police to move in for an arrest of the drivers of the cars used by Brian and Roman. This results in a high-speed chase across the city with Bilkins and U.S. Customs also tracking them. The duo leads the police to a warehouse where a scramble by dozens of street racers organized by Tage disorients the police. This was an interesting but kind of cheesy car chase that turns into just like chaos. I don't know if this would work. So let me see, what is that? Yeah, it disorients the police. Following the scramble, the police managed to pull over the Evo and Eclipse, only to find that they were driven by Tage and Suki. They straight up sell Tage and Suki out. They there's no way that the cops wouldn't just like charge them too. I couldn't believe Tage and Suki would even do that, and they were trying to. I thought it was funny that they were just trying to like wave at the cops as if they didn't do anything wrong. It's like, y'all just like organize this entire thing. Like, They may only have like a few tickets on them, but they still got caught. So, as it turns out, the duo had switched the cars and had escaped in the two muscle cars they had won earlier. Um, which I was like, okay. I've seen this movie, and then coming back to revisit it. I've seen parts of this movie, and coming back to revisit it kind of feels like how I watched it. It doesn't really make that much sense. Like, why the police are this stupid? Um, couldn't you see it was a black man and a Asian or I don't know what not a black man and not a white man in these two cars? I guess they just had them blacked out or something. I'm not sure what Suki's ethnicity is, so forgive me. Um, as Brian approaches the destination point in his Camaro, Enrique tells him to take the Tarpon Point Marine exit instead of heading to the airfield. Meanwhile, Roman gets rid of Roberto by using an improvised ejector seat in the Challenger powered by nitrous oxide. Um, that was pretty funny. Ejectocito, cuz. Oh gosh. So that was a one of the classic lines and scenes that are in this movie. This I think that is another part where this series got ridiculous. The more I think about it, like having seats that are just like flying out of the car, like is that even plausible? So let me see. At the airfield, customs agents have Varun's plane convoy surrounded, only to discover they have been duped into a decoy maneuver while Varun is at a boatyard several miles away. Heh 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 heh. Varun reveals he knew Monica was an undercover agent and purposely gave her wrong information on the destination point. When Brian arrives at the marina, Varun forces Monica onto his private yacht and orders Enrique to kill Brian. In a darker movie, I think she would have been killed right there. As Enrique prepares to kill him, Brian's ejector seat fails, but Roman suddenly appears to help Brian encapsulate Enrique. Varun makes his escape, but Brian and Roman use the Camaro to drive off a ramp. Crashing on top of the yacht, Brian shoots and wounds Varun moments before he is about to shoot Brian and Roman with a shotgun, making him miss, who is then arrested by Monica. Let me see. Markham grants Brian and Roman full pardons, and in return, Roman turns over the second half of Varun's money. The two agree to stay in Miami, and Brian suggests opening a garage funded by a cut of Varun's money Roman kept for themselves. So honestly, they could have ended the entire series at this point, but they were like, "Oh, but we need more money." I did find it interesting that despite all the good things that are happening, all the things that they're trying to do, that they are just like, you know what? We're still going to be criminals. We're still going to steal some of this drug money, and we're going to do our own thing with it. I was just like, I guess Brian O'Connor is not supposed to be a good cop, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, anyways, having watched the second movie, and trying to see, I did have people saying, "Oh, dude, Too Fast, Too Furious is a classic, instant classic," but then I hear the same thing about 3 as well. So, what is the classic? Which one's the classic? I will say John Singleton and the cinematographer Matthew F. Leonetti bring a different flair and a different flavor than the cinematographer Erickson Core and Rob Cohen did on the directing and cinematography of the first one. The sound is completely different. The cars, the looks, the girls, that is still there. The sexiness, or the intrinsic uh, I guess sexiness is not exactly the right word these days, but the kind of over sexualization of the cars mixed in with, women, it's definitely all still there. And I think that it is prominent at least through the first um four or five movies. Not to say that's a good thing or a bad thing. I generally enjoy it. I know that some people are gonna be like, "Well, we're the dudes dancing around the cars." It's like, okay, well, y'all can do that too. So, um, but I enjoyed Too Fast, Too Furious. I definitely think it probably deserved, um, I'm not exactly sure what it needed to do to kind of put itself a little bit above. I do think the street races are a little bit more intense in what happens in them, or the escalation of, are they going to live or are they going to die, is much more heightened in this movie, clearly by the bigger budget. Um, so uh, it's not so much that. I think they just needed to kind of highlight different aspects of this movie to kind of say how this is different than the other one. Because I think if you go in from the first one going to the second one, you're expecting everything to be the same. You're expecting that LA feel. I know that I need to kind of go back and see how the trailers portrayed the two movies, but my guess is Too Fast, Too Furious did not um, set itself aside as a different side type of mission within this franchise. So yeah, it definitely has its lines, and it merits being here. I'm not sure if it, in my opinion, it would be like top three of the movies. I think number one is still probably my top as of right now. I've only watched the first five. I think I would go 1, 5, 1, 5, 4, 2, 3. And not to say I dislike three, it's just three is not the first one I would visit. I think visually three might be one of the best, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so uh so Too Fast, Too Furious, and we are off to the third movie as of right now. Thank you for watching, listening, LuckyDog Podcast. Be sure to check out YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias. If we're listening in like 200 years and all of that doesn't exist anymore, then whatever the social media is, hopefully I'm on there. If we're all living on the cloud at that point, then yeah, check it out on there. LuckyDog Podcast. You got it. Thank you for watching, listening, LuckyDog Podcast, supporting the patreon.com/LuckyDog Podcast. We could not do this without you. Thank you for your support, and be sure to check out the rest of the Fast and the Furious franchise that we are covering only here at the LuckyDog Podcast. Thank you. Take it easy. Family.